Hey everyone, welcome and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I will be showing you how I sketch and paint a shop house in Seoul, Korea. I will be keeping it simple as always, using my Sakura Micron pen size 04, my mechanical pencil, and a little Skechers pocket box by Winsor & Newton. As always, you can find links to the materials and the reference photo down in the video description below. So I usually place my sketchbook at an angle so it's easier to get the perspective right. And for this reference photo, I took it myself, and I was really drawn to the beautiful combination of colors and textures on this building. So as you can see, I decided to sketch only half of this building. So right from the start, I cropped that picture and I decided on my point of view, my field of view, and my point of focus. In this case, I decided to include the stairs on the right and the plants as well, instead of drawing the whole building. So I cropped that picture here first. Alright, so now I'm going to start with a few reference marks using my mechanical pencil. And I'm trying to visualize where that building will be on the page first, especially that line down the right third, which will separate the building from the staircase. Here I'm adding a few dots to indicate the corners of the building. So I'm thinking about where the building ends, how much space should be left around the building. So these are the simple things to keep in mind. I then divide that building into the 3 levels as such. So I'm putting down these little dots, and they are just rough guides. They don't need to be perfect. You can always adjust as you go along with the pen outlines later. Alright, so we have our rough guide, and now I'm going to be starting with the pen outlines using this micron pen, which has permanent ink inside. It's water resistant, since I will be working with watercolor later. So as you can see, I'm just quickly putting down some loose strokes, starting with the roof. And I started out doing this sketch really quickly, so I'm not fussing over proportions or clean lines too much. So right now I'm sketching the main components or the big shapes of this building first before adding in the details. Most of the time, it's easier for me to have a basic framework first and then to work my way inwards. So if you break this building down into simple parts, you will see that it's basically mostly just easy rectangles and squares and lines connected to each other. So I used to sketch with straighter and cleaner lines in the past, but I found the result to be a little bit lacking, somehow. So I've been sketching with these looser, more jagged lines ever since. And the main two reasons why I like sketching more loosely is that one, I love the aesthetic of it, and number two, I'm always short on time and I don't have hours and hours to do line work all the time or to paint every single detail of a subject. So at the moment, I find that this style is what works best for me, and I think it works well for me for now. So if you haven't already noticed, this video is in real time so that you can sketch along with me if you like, or if you prefer, you can adjust the playback speed according to your liking. And on the subject of time, I have been very busy lately with other things, and to be honest, I haven't had much time to sketch and record and to edit videos. So some of you might have noticed that I have less videos coming out recently. And I do want to continue making more videos, and I do have lots of ideas that I haven't really had the opportunity to explore yet. So hopefully I can work on those things in the future. But in the meantime, I might start doing some simpler sketches. So we might have some shorter videos which are easier to digest maybe, and take less time to make. So let me know what you think down in the comments below if you would be interested in sketching some simple things with shorter videos, and as opposed to these longer videos with more detailed sketches. So for this building, I have done the main structure, and now I'm moving inwards to fill in the details. So I'm adding those windows and small little details. For this subject, we have a beautiful cafe on the ground floor, and the second floor looks like a restaurant or bar, and the third floor looks like it could maybe be an apartment. And I find that this building seems like it has many stories to tell. And I could have just drawn the bottom, the ground floor, the bottom level, which is the cafe, and that's the most aesthetic subject, the most aesthetic part of this building. But I thought maybe I could draw these three levels, and I also love how they connect to each other with those stairs. So that's why we are including that part as well, though it's going to take up more time. And however, I do think that it's worth it and will make the sketch more interesting. So how you interpret that scene and what you choose to focus on and what you choose to include or exclude can give others a different story or a different sketch. So that's one thing to play around with, to try and zoom in on the details or to zoom out and to pay attention to the big picture instead and see how that makes you feel. So I think that's something that's really fun about urban sketching. You can decide where your focus will be and what your perspective of this subject is, because everyone sees things differently. Some people might see the whole building, some people might only see the cafe on the ground floor, some people might actually notice the stairs, so it's a little bit more uncommon, but that does happen. So everyone just sees things differently, and I find that really interesting about sketches like this. Alright, so we're starting on the second part of this sketch, and it's a little bit trickier than the first half. So I'm starting with that top staircase right there. So one thing you might have noticed is that I move my hand away a lot, and I take these little pauses. So this is so that I can monitor the big picture better. I can see how things are progressing. And also, during that time, I estimate where I should go next. And besides that, I'm also constantly referencing that photo, that reference picture, or that subject, and I'm trying to compare it to my sketch and see if it is, if there's anything that is not right, anything I need to correct. And yeah, so that's why I have a lot of like mini pauses when I sketch. So if you don't see that, maybe you don't understand why I'm taking so many pauses. But actually, there's a lot going on inside my mind. And I'm trying to interpret this and that. And I'm comparing that photo with that, what we have on the page and how much space we have left. So that comes naturally over time. But yeah, that's something that I think some people might not know. So yeah. For stairs like these, I think it's easier to draw the next platform first before filling in each step, like what I'm doing right here. So that makes sure that the platform is at the correct height first before you go and put in all the steps, and then suddenly you realize, oh, the platform is not at the correct height, and that is something that's very noticeable, that might be really noticeable. So if something has a tendency to be wrong, that's what I pay more attention to first. So these stairs are definitely the toughest part of this sketch, for me at least. And I can see all this going wrong with the spacings between the grills and the heights of each step. So I'm definitely slowing down a little more here and being more careful. However, I still did this part freehand because I was quite confident. So no pencil outlines were done for this part. And I guess it could have looked more neat if I used pencil to mark in the main points first. But for me, some unevenness in the finer details is okay, as long as the integrity of the bigger picture is maintained. Like here, I'm sketching that column which is connecting the two parts of the stairs, the top and bottom, which is, I think, is quite important to sort of stabilize everything. So right now I am sketching in those little bushes at the background. Just a small detail, but I find that just a little bit of greens around these urban structures can really add to the piece. Not just in terms of color, but also I think it gives the piece more life. On the other hand, I decided to omit the bike and the electric pole, which are in the reference photo, because I felt that things were getting a little bit too complicated. But if I were to sketch this sketch on a bigger format, in a bigger format, I would definitely consider adding those elements to further add interest to this piece. And I think maybe a bike could also add to the life of the piece. So here I'm just adding in some more final details. I'm adding in some bricks here and there and maybe some texture marks. Okay, so we're done with the pen outlines, and now I'm going to start painting with watercolor. I've been doing mostly small sketches recently because, again, I don't have enough time. So I've just been using this small box a lot. And the more familiar I am with the paints, the easier it is to paint with and to mix the colors that I want. So I already have a lot of these colors mixed on the palette, and I don't clean it up very often unless I'm working on something really different and I want really different colors. So yeah, so this is the Winsor and Newton's Skechers Pocket Box. So if you've been here on my channel for a while, you know that I use this very often. And yeah, I can recommend using this, or you can use more professional paints. But to me personally, I think it's adequate enough. These are student grade. They are part of the Cotman range, and I do find them really easy to use. The first color that I'm using here is yellow ochre mixed with Chinese white, but halfway through painting that signboard, I actually added a little bit of cadmium yellow hue to the mix so that it looked a little bit brighter than before. Next, I'm painting a light wash of yellow for some of the walls, just a very light base color. As you can see, I am trying to vary the intensity of the paint or the color. And so sometimes I'm using more paint and pigment, and sometimes I'm using more water. Okay, so next I'm mixing a light yellow brown using yellow ochre and burnt sienna. And I'm going to be using this color to paint the second layer for that ground floor cafe, which has a wood colored finish. The next color that I'm mixing here is a mixture of burnt sienna, burnt umber, and alizarin crimson hue. So the result of that mixture is a sort of reddish brown color, and I'm going to be using that to paint the bricks and any other area which needs a similar color. So it makes sense to paint all the areas that need the same color first, since it's already on my brush. And if I need to, I will kind of tweak the mixture a little bit with different paints, and then I will proceed to continue painting. So I usually don't paint every single brick for brick walls like these. So what I like to do is I scatter out the bricks in this one color first, and I don't paint them too evenly spaced out. I make them a little bit random, maybe a few clumps here and maybe a single brick here, and then I will add more and more bricks with different tones of brown so that that wall becomes filled up. So here I have decided to use the same color to paint the lines on the awning, even though it is not the same, it's not exactly the same as what we see in the reference photo. So next I added some burnt sienna to our existing reddish brown mix so that we have a darker brown, and I'm using that to add more bricks to add some shadows as well. Now I'm mixing cadmium red pale hue plus alizarin crimson hue so that we can use that red color to paint the red striped awning on the first floor. Alright, now I'm using some burnt umber to paint in those lines on the wood on that first floor. So right now I'm mixing sap green and a little bit of yellow ochre, and I'm going to be using this mixture to paint the first layer for the plants. So I like to just dab in really loosely these sort of leaf-like strokes. So I like to leave some white space as well. I don't like to fill up the whole space. And after I've done that first layer, I quickly then mix in some ultramarine into this same mix, and I use that darker green to dab in some shadows. So here I'm mixing the darkest mix of this piece, and it's a mixture of ultramarine plus burnt umber. And I will be using this dark blue, almost gray color for the walls on the second floor, as well as the stairs and for the shadows as well. So as you can see, I mixed a little bit more ultramarine into that same gray mix using a different brush. And now I am trying to give that wall some variation by using that different brush to paint some areas and create more blue in those areas. So now I'm going to be painting the reflections on the second floor window, and I'm going to be using a more wet on wet technique. So there seems to be a lot going on in that second floor window, and it's a little bit tricky, but as long as you use a really loaded brush with lots of paint, you can just play around with the colors and just see what happens. It doesn't have to be perfect. That's what I think, because this is just a very abstract thing. And so now I'm dabbing in with different brushes, separate colors. And I am not trying to get them to mix too much. I want them to sort of merge a little bit, but not too much until it becomes a different color. So the first one is the first color that I laid down was cerulean blue, and then I put in some cadmium yellow hue, and those two kind of mixed together a little bit more and became kind of greenish on that window pane there. But that's okay. We will just see what happens from here. And now I'm adding in that same gray blue or that shadow color to the top part, and that's where the shadow of the awning is going to be. And after that, I added some water. I'm adding some water here, and then I am then proceeding to add more shadows. And the key thing is to make sure that everything is still wet so that you can kind of play around with the pigments and make sure there's no hard edges. If you see some hard edges like right now, try to blend that into the wetter paint on the page. And so, yeah, now I'm adding in some green from before, the same mixture. And that is sort of a reflecting, that is because the window is sort of reflecting maybe some trees, and the yellow is maybe caused by lamps, So this can be really a really fun thing to do, sort of playing around when you have the time. And it can also be sort of nerve-wracking when you're trying to get some specific effect. But when you're doing this, most of the time you have to have an open mind, because it's going to look how it's going to look, because the paints sometimes have a mind of its own. So yeah, I find this part to be quite fun and loose as well. So the result of that is we get some very sort of abstract reflections in these windows. And that's how I like to keep it. These window reflections in the reference are actually quite defined, and they're almost like mirror reflections. But I don't think that it's necessary to add too much detail to these windows. I like the abstract and sort of blurry effect. Alright, so we're finally done with all those windows and reflections, and now I'm going to start on those shadows. And as I mentioned before, I like to use the same gray blue color for shadows, but in this case, I did add a little bit more burnt sienna. So in total, we have three colors. We have ultramarine, burnt sienna, and burnt umber in this gray blue mix. The resulting color is gray, but with a more bluish tinge. So this is where everything starts to become more 3D. The forms become clearer and everything sort of comes together during this stage. So it's important to really look at the reference and identify which areas have which kind of shadows and how dark and how intense those shadows are. Sometimes we need to build up a few layers of that same gray to reach our correct intensity. Like right below those stairs, I know there should be some really dark shadows. So I added in more layers of that gray. Okay, so we are almost done. I'm just adding in some smaller details like splashes of yellow paint here and there, and just sort of cleaning things up a little bit. So we do have quite a few signboards and words in this reference photo, but I only wrote the word coffee, and mostly just because I was craving for some. So after that, I added some finishing touches with my pen. I added some little dots and strokes just for that last final touch. And we are done. I hope you found this video helpful to you, and if you did, do remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Your encouragement really means the world to me. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.